Welcome back to another tutorial. This tutorial's going to be looking at the elements of art or the elements of design. They're pretty interchangeable. You should have read through this page on the portal and had a bit of a class discussion on it. And these key ingredients, these elements of design, are what helps make a good piece of design. They're the building blocks. So we've got them here, and they are line, direction, shape, color, tone, texture, and size. When you use all those, you don't have to use all of them in a piece of design, but when you use them correctly and choose which ones you're going to use carefully, it often enhances the success of a design. So what we're going to do is we're going to create sort of a little heading for each of these paragraphs, which then can be put onto your folio blog to match in, so you can see some other people have done their versions there. So in Illustrator, we're going to be learning a few more little skills as well. So one thing we can do is just, for instance, let's do the first one. So we're going to do line, like so. And I'm just literally writing the word line using some lines. So it's quite simple, from anchor to anchor. You can easily do the same, or you can have a go at using the pen tool as well. So we're just creating some simple lines like so. Hopefully that looks a bit like an E. So we've got the word line. Now just to enhance that a bit, that could be what I use as my title. Possibly just the idea of, thickening up the strokes a little bit. Playing perhaps with some of the different lines and how they look. So putting different rounded edges on them. Or even going further and just thinking about the type of stroke that you're going to be doing. So, you could pop some little arrowheads on one of them. Maybe not too much, that's quite big, but you can have a play with a dashed line, whether you want to have a dashed line on your stroke and what that might look like so. This one over here, or this E over here, we might want to put something else and make it sort of so that it's got an interesting shape to it, like so, and you can just see how that comes along. So just playing with a lot of those stroke effects, have a go, seeing how it wraps around the corner. Do you want to have a pointy edge? Do you want to have a rounded edge? And having a go at that. So you can see the word line. I would then upload that to my blog, and then I would have this information about line underneath it. Next one, show you a little thing called typing on a path. So you create a path. So the way you create a path is we're just going to create, say, a simple curve shape. And what you do is you hold down the text toolbar and you say type on a path, and you say I want to type on this path. So we might bring it up here, have our font, we can just leave it as that, and we can see that when we type direction and make it a little bit smaller, that we actually have, the word direction being flown in some sort of direction, and you can move that along the path and change, its size as well. So you can see direction, and the way that direction is very important in getting our eye to follow it. Again, you could just do something simple as popping a little stroke around it, just to add something a little extra to make it a little more interesting, and weighting up the stroke a bit more too. So you can see that's direction there. The next one that you need to do is shape. So hopefully you know what a shape is, but I'm just going to use, you could just create shapes to try and write the word using your anchor tool and creating some big shapes. What I'll do for this one though is I'm just going to make a couple of letters. And I think I'm just going to copy and paste these guys. and just treat each, rather than writing the entire word, just writing each one separately for my shape. And then popping a P in, and we'll do an E as well for shape. And then I can just obviously arrange these guys and move them around so that I do have an interesting shape that lines up with my letters. So that could be, possibly what I would do for shape, just showing these letters and how they intersect with one another and cross over to make that word. So you can see there that they intersect to make some shapes. You could possibly just put a simple rectangle or polygon sort of shape to emphasize that idea behind it. Pick a new color, send it to the back. I'm just shrinking it. So you can just see how something like that works quite simply. So yeah, that could be my one for shape, showing that I understand what shape is. So we got line, direction, shape. And one of the next key ingredients is colour, which you should have learnt a bit about or know about, and we're just going to make one to represent colour. I guess the easiest way would be to write ourselves a word, and with that word we can just change each letter to be a different colour. So what I'm going to do here is just, again, like what I did with the shape, create each one, create a replica of it, and just change the font whilst we're there as well. Just grab a font from our font library, try to think of something that I haven't. See how we go. And then with these, it's a matter of just lining them up. And then making each one a different sort of colour, I guess, to show that you understand what colour is and give that idea. Or you could have some sort of colourful background, but that's quite simply colour. And then I would just change these, pick a yellow, and I guess I can leave that last one black, so you can see colour there, just showing I understand how to use colour and play with Illustrator as well. So you got line, direction, shape, colour. The next one is tone. Now what I'm going to show you here is how to do a gradient. And with a gradient we write the word tone, so we'll just write the word in. something nice and chunky. So the Arial black, so it's nice thick lettering. And what we're going to do here, I don't think I've shown you this before, is we're going to create outlines on our type. So at the moment you can see I can double click, I can select a letter, change its size, etc. Now once you create outlines by going type create outlines, it treats it like a bunch of anchor points now. So it thinks that you've made, an image, which is what we've told it to do. So that's what we've asked it to do. So now when we use the direct selection tool, you can see when I say pick up a couple of these little parts, I can actually change and stretch some parts of the letter. So it actually doesn't see it as a letter anymore. It actually just treats it as as anchor points. So you can see those dots and you can click on them and move them and change the handles and things as well. So that's creating outlines with type, and it is a very important thing to do, because you see people and they'll write a font and then they'll change it and move their letters around and change their shape. So that's how you do that, and you can see tone. The reason why I did that was not just to change the sort of letter shapes, but more so we can do a gradient. So what we need to do is bring up our gradient, and then you double click on your gradient and it brings it in to our little fill over here. Now you can see I can select that whole lot there, and when I double click it actually now turns this into a black and white gradient. You can't actually put a gradient over normal type, so you must create your outlines. If you don't create your outlines it won't work. So you can see here how that's working. And yeah, so then you've got your tone there. You can change your colors obviously, so you can have more black or more white. You can change where your sort of gradient comes from, and you can see that that is tone there. And it'd probably be good, I think, just to have a little outline on it as well. So you can see that's tone, and it's showing that I understand how to go from light to dark. Another thing that you could do, just so you can see some other things that we can do with it, is we can go to, say, an effect, and up here there's a bunch of different effects, so please have a play with all these things that you can do. And I might go to artistic and go to rough pastels, and it'll give us like a nice sort of textured look, and you can play with all these variables just like you can in Photoshop. So you can see now that that looks quite nice, that I've done this little tone and given it an effect, and starting to make each of my little headers look quite unique and quite different. So the next one we're going to do is texture, and we're going to bring in a picture and do a thing called a clipping mask. So we're going to go File, Place, pick out a texture, bring that texture in. We're just going to move this across. Now to use a clipping mask, we're going to write the word texture, bring it in, and then we're going to make it nice and large so that it can take up a lot of that texture, I guess. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a clipping mask. A clipping mask is, I want you to picture, if I said to you, can you use masking tape and tape around the outside of those black letters and make sure there's paper around the rest of it so that we can't see anything but what's in the black letters. And you'll notice if I switch it on its head like that, that's kind of what we want it to look like. We want to see the image in the letters, but I don't want to have all this stuff. So a clipping mask gets rid of all the stuff on the outside and makes it all white, and lets the texture, the picture, show through into the letters. So it's quite simple. You just select both elements, so you got the word and the picture in the background, and then you just right click and write make clipping mask, and you can see, again I'll replay that, now it's turned that picture and it's shown through the letters, but then you don't see the rest of the stuff that you want. So we've now got texture in there. Make him a bit smaller, and so that's a clipping mask. So you can see now on our texture we actually have some cool looking texture. Line, shape, direction, color, tone, texture. The last one is size. Quite an easy one, I guess, to finish off on. You can do it a number of different ways using a number of different fonts. I'll just simply do it using the same font, but I'd like you to experiment with how you do this one here. Actually, what I might do, see how this works. So this is very simple. The idea is just that size does matter, and there's different sizes. So we've got the SIZE. You know, we could make the size S massive, the I also big but getting smaller. Leave that one there, and then making this size 36 point or something. So you can understand the concept of size. You can be a bit more creative in how you present that one. But that's size. You know, we could add something very simply, maybe give it a bit of colour, jazz it up a bit. Got size. You could perhaps stylize it, pop a little drop shadow on it, see what that looks like. Yep, great, we've got a drop shadow. You know, if I wanted to do a little bit of 3D, a bit more 3D, I could go into my effects and do an extrude and bevel and choose sort of what sort of angle I want, and then the depth of it, play around with that, and we've got our word size. So you can see how they all work, and I'm trying to really illustrate the word through the techniques that I can show in Illustrator. So that's what you're coming up with, something similar but also being very creative, having a go of Illustrator, using all the different parts of it, trying to experiment a little bit, and then you're popping each heading in front of the information that you're going to have on your blog that relates to each heading. So here's the end of this tutorial, and you can go on with the task.